And now, one of the parts of the day that we often get some really great feedback about because it is an opportunity to have a conversation, if you will, and that is our executive panel. And so joining me today here on stage, we will see that we have Valerie Berger, the Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of Alberta Blue Cross. We have Lockyer, who is the Chief People Officer, People and Culture with the ATB Financial, and Naomi Schmold, who is the Chief People Officer and Associate General Counsel with Enbridge. Thank you so much for joining us. Give them a round of applause. And so, I mean, again, look at the roles that you're in, look at where we are. And so maybe, Naomi, if we can start with you on the end, tell us a little bit about who you are, where'd you come from, how did you get to where you are? Like, where did you start in business?
Great question. Is this on?
Yeah.
Everybody hear me? So I started in a very small town in Alberta, grew up in a town that valued family and fun, and I grew up in a family that valued education. So I feel like I had a very privileged upbringing in that regard. I then went on and pursued music. My mom was a piano teacher, and so pursued music as a thing that I loved, but didn't know what to do when I was going to university, so thought, why not continue this journey with music? And I loved it. I loved singing. I was an opera singer about 1 million years ago, it feels like now. And I loved it. What I didn't love about it was the starving artist part of that journey. And so when I thought about it, when I reflected, when I thought, is this for me? I thought about what other options there were out there. And what I didn't love about music and the performing arts in that sense was a lot of evenings, weekends, away from family, away from friends. And so I thought, what better place to kind of explore a career in law, which is so much better balanced for people, right? It's a balanced lifestyle. So I went into law and quickly recognized that the traditional world of law was not for me. A lot of people at the time were going into, corporate practice, were going into big firm environments, and that's fine. And if you are in this crowd and that's your stream, that's wonderful. But that I quickly recognized was not for me. So I had to do something brave and say I wasn't going to go down that path. And so I did other things. I thought that I wanted to get into the world of academics, so I worked with institutes. I did finally article, and then I quickly moved into the world of in-house lawyering, which for me I love because it blended my law with people and solving business problems and creatively using your mind to solve business problems and to work in that way. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question, but that was how I got my start and how I came to be where I'm at right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're glad you could join us today. Lockyer, welcome.
It's so nice to be here.
Similar type question. Where'd you start?
Where'd I start? I'm trying to figure out if I should go back into my youth, but I'm gonna. You sort of set the stage, and you had me thinking of a couple of things. So I grew up in Toronto, inner city kid, very multicultural environment. Mom and dad still married. My dad did all the caretaking. So even from a very young age, my father was a huge role model. He still had a job, but he picked me up. He was at all of the outings. And I think it's important because you'll see a golden thread as I go through my career, this assumption that I can have and that men will support me, which I encourage you all to have. I went into university. I was going to be a theater star. I could not sing. My dancing is subpar. But there was just something about it. I always knew sort of left brain and creativity and innovation was really something that just brought me a lot of energy, but I love money. So as I got to university and learned more about bringing those two things together, I went into communications and business because I'm like, hey, I'm not a science person. I'm not going to go down the health spend. I'm not memorizing anything to become a lawyer. What am I good at? I'm good at words. I'm good at connections. I'm good at synthesizing and adding clarity. I think I'm going to try this HR gig out. And that happened pretty early in my career. I was working for an American organization. I think they're Desjardins now here in Canada. And so I came home from a year of travel. Oh, this happens too in my career. I'm like, I'm just giving it all up. I'm going to go travel for a year. So lots of curiosity and innovation again through the career. Came back, had no money, got into an insurance company and was doing large loss fire claims. I loved it. I loved the empathy. I loved being able to meet people where they were at. I love feeling purposeful in my work. I loved that they were so happy to see me and I could help them get their families back to where they needed to be. But ultimately there was something niggling that I wanted to be in some kind of education people side of the business. So I worked for an organization that had a develop from within. It's going to totally age me. I'm traumatized when I say this. My first gig was teaching the Microsoft product platform. So I would go into a classroom every day and teach Word and Excel. Ironically, can't do pivot tables. So if you don't do it, you lose it. But that was kind of the pathway for me into HR. And then from that point on, just sort of fell in love with the people side of enabling performance, people side of enabling the realization of the strategy. And I honestly feel like HR, we're kind of puppet masters. Like we get to sit around in all the cool dialogues and all the cool conversations and use our influence to really make things happen. So I've moved around a few organizations. I've had the opportunity to work overseas, and I've taken some great leadership moments home from Asia, and then moved out to Western Canada to just get a little bit of my vibe back in terms of business and the way I want to live. So here I am working for the best bank in Alberta. I hope you're all clients. Wouldn't change a thing.
There we go. Awesome. Thanks, Tara. Valerie.
Thank you, Bill. Well, CFOs think HR is the puppet masters, too. Just all joking aside.
You know the truth.
I know. Somewhat a common thread, I noticed that a little bit of falling into our positions or finding our way. I was in post-secondary, but I went to NAIT. I didn't go to university. And it really was the dean at the time who said, after year one, we're heading into a recession. If you want to have a job and your marks are good, go into accounting. I'm like, well, I want a job. Okay, I'll go into accounting. It's not that I loved it. I loved numbers. No. But it really gave me the confidence that I needed in myself, because I really enjoyed the number of the courses that were available in business and accounting. I then went on to public practice, where I obtained a couple of designations while I was in public practice. I loved the clients and the people. It all came down to the people, mentoring them, coaching them, seeing them mature and grow in their careers. I did, however, go out into industry. I was in a utility company for a number of years, which gave me opportunities, again, lots of different projects, not just accounting, not just financial statements. Took me to South America, to Australia, and again, it was always the people that drew me close. I volunteered, did some work with the Stollery Children's Health Foundation, and circled back to NAIT, and I chaired their audit and investment committee, was vice chair of the board, and it was there through people where I was given an opportunity and said, why don't you throw your name in the hat for the CFO at Alberta Blue Cross? And I was one of those who never really worried about it or thought about aspiring to the highest level, but thought, why not? There's someone who is sponsoring me and believes in me, and I'm going to do that. And I love the challenge, and it's a great organization with a fabulous purpose for looking after people's well-being, and I've been there for 2 years, and I'm loving it.
Awesome. Congratulations, congratulations. So, yeah, recognize. And that's a bit about what I wanted to actually say, and then I also want to poll the audience here in just one second. So, you know, when you take a look at your accomplishments, they are great. You know, we have chief people officers, we have CFOs, chief financial officers, we've got chief counsel as well, and so those are amazing accomplishments. This is about allowing space for women to be their greatest, for women to be at their best. And we talked about having that joint conversation. So let's just do a quick survey of the audience. If you are a vice president or C-level within your organization, just proudly raise your hand right now if you would, just so we can see. We've got a smattering in and around. Okay, all right. If you're like a manager director level, if you will, please raise your hand. Let us know where you are here in the audience today. Good on you, growing as well, awesome. And if you're identifying yourself as an individual contributor, one of our people that asked a question earlier said that they don't, you know, they're not in a senior office. How do they influence? Let us see where the individual contributors are. Interesting, okay, interesting, almost even with that. So as we look at that, you know, I may invite you to answer your questions and maybe share how do we get to where you are today based on where they are today. And let's take a look. So Valerie, I'm going to come to you with this next question. Sorry, actually Naomi, I'm going to come to you with this next question. What do you believe are the most important attributes of successful leaders today?
Yeah, great question. When I was reflecting on this, I thought about what attributes I admire in great leaders that I've experienced. And I've had the privilege and the pleasure of having great leaders in my life, in my career. I've had the opposite of that as well, and sometimes those experiences can teach you more. But I think when I reflect on my great leaders and where I would like to be as a leader, and it's a continuous journey as well, I think about some of the words that were mentioned already by our illustrious speakers this morning, and it really is about, for me, courage, really having the courage to step up and have difficult conversations, and with that, curiosity. It's about really wanting to understand your team, wanting to understand drivers of what is driving people in their roles and what they want out of their careers, really wanting to know them better as people. And I think that comes down to my third C. I had 3 C's that I was thinking about today as I was reflecting on this morning's speakers. And what I heard was really a resounding thread of caring. And I think that can be transformational for a leader, to look through the lens of empathy and caring. And I think for me, when I'm at my best as a leader, it's when I'm connecting with my team on that very personal, caring level. I care about them as individuals. I care about their health. I care about their wellness. I care about their aspirations. I want them to reach their full potential as humans. And so I think that is, that's what I aspire to be. That's when I'm at my best. That's what I'm thinking about. And so, yeah, I think I'd...
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that. Tech, can we get a little bit more monitor on stage so we can hear each other a little bit more? Thank you so much. Valerie, you were going to respond to the same question as well for us.
Very similar to what Naomi shared. I too agree with courage. Being authentic. I know there was talk about that earlier today. Being your true self. And you have to have courage to be authentic, because it's hard. It can be very difficult. But another factor is maybe a bit more on the communication side. So making sure you find that time, communicate, all different levels, all different mediums. You can never over-communicate. And it's hard when you're busy, and we all have very, very busy schedules, but fit in those different levels of communication through town halls, through one-on-ones. Just help fill that void, because when there's that void is when people come up with their own story of what's going on in your organization. And there's so much today in terms of the speed of transformation that organizations are going through. So fill it with your own story and your own communication.
Beautiful.
That's an important characteristic.
And so would you challenge us then to ask people in your roles more questions? If we were an individual contributor, should we come right to you? Do we go through that corporate chain? How do we communicate? Because you're really bringing forward for me Brené Brown again, who was on this stage here in Calgary a few years back, where she's talking about courage and vulnerability. And when we have the courage to ask those questions, we might be vulnerable to be thought of as being somebody difficult to deal with. So what would your guidance be to us around that, open to anybody?
I need to read more Brené Brown. So courage to me is to deciding firstly, do you actually want to be a leader, and do you know what that means? The world needs beautiful, professional, technical leadership, which means you are a subject matter expert in your field, and you can be incredibly successful, and the world needs you. The world probably needs you more now than it did 20 years ago. Leadership's a long slog. It's a profession. It's a profession that you never get a designation from, because no one will ever graduate you, because it's a constant improvement process that you're constantly going through. So if you're comfortable that your success comes through others and never yourself, if you're comfortable that acknowledgement will be of your people and not of you, and if you get really excited about doing things at scale through other brilliant minds, then leadership's probably in your wheelhouse. But I would do that self-awareness work and say, am I a leader? Because I think that's the path to success, whatever success means for you, or am I a leader because I actually have a bit more of an altruistic bent of what I want to do in my life?
Wow. Care to add anything more, Valerie?
I think you need to write a book.
Yeah. She's working on a 10-pager, you told me, Tara.
10-pager, I'm going to do the rounds, it's going to be my retirement. Yeah.
So, Tara, I'm going to come back to you again, though. And the pandemic has brought many changes to organizations, from remote work to the Great Resignation. What are some of the struggles your company has faced? What are some of the positives that emerged from that transformative time? And how do you keep your talent engaged?
Oh, the Great Resignation.
Yes.
So ATB has not been immune to the Great Resignation, although we have an incredible culture and we're able to retain and attract still phenomenal talent out of Alberta. We are seeing our turnover numbers go up. And through the research into the Great Pandemic, we are really seeing three things that are driving this. One is money. Hey, if you can go across the street and make 300% more, that's a driver. The second one is people are leaving their organizations because they want more. They want to drive for purpose. They want to come to work for a purpose-driven organization. They need to feel like as they lean into their 50, 60, 70, 80-hour week that they're doing something meaningful. So purpose is huge. And then the third dimension is flexibility, which I think a lot of companies have learned over a pandemic. Like, flexibility rocks. We have to figure out how to coordinate so that people know what they need to deliver on, but let's insert some flexibility. So because of who ATB is, we're very purpose-driven, we're incredibly flexible. I've renamed it the Great Reshuffle, because I'm actually finding this opportunity for us to get phenomenal talent out of the market. In the short term, it's a little tricky. We've got a lot of tech talent coming into Alberta, phenomenal for the province, right? But right now, we've got a lot of people fishing in our ponds. I think that's going to settle out over the next couple of years, but I think that's good news for Alberta. So one, have the things that people want, so you can snag them away from the companies that aren't offering purpose and aren't offering some of those flexibilities, and then just make sure you're telling the employees what the employment value proposition is to live and work here. And we've just made a huge investment again in our employment value prop brand to go out to the market and say, hey, ATB's a little bit different. How you like me now? Because we're going after some new talent. So I think you have to always be refreshing who you are and what you want and who would be a good fit.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you for that. Valerie, coming to you now. This morning we addressed the importance of recognizing mental health issues in order to achieve wellness and peak performance. Currently, approximately 1 in 5 Canadians will personally experience a mental health problem or illness, many of whom, of course, are women. How is your organization addressing the rise in mental health issues in your workplace?
Thank you, Bill. Well, we started addressing mental health at Alberta Blue Cross before the pandemic as well. We knew it was going to be a major issue. People just weren't talking about it as much. Now there is this discussion happening, which is positive. But we have a lot of resources available. A little bit of what Clara was talking about. It's different for everyone, whether it's psychology visits, cognitive behavioral therapy. It could be other one-on-one sessions. Lunch and Learns, we have guest speakers, we have employees willing to share their experiences, open up and be vulnerable, because it really creates that environment where it's not just me, there's others out there. So that's really important. We do have mandatory mental health training, which everyone obviously has to take, it's mandatory. And then we have wellness breaks. We try to encourage people during the day to get outside. Yes. Yeah, take those deep breaths and have a change of scenery. And we know that it's ever changing, the mental health environment. So we will continue to evolve and change and listen to our employees, listen to our customers, members, and what they need as well from a benefits perspective too. And even when you think something like as simple as a town hall, we've turned it into a call-in town hall, and we encourage people to go for your walk. Listen to the town hall on the phone when we're engaging, so that they have that opportunity to, I guess, multitask. But that's what we're doing here at Alberta Blue Cross.
Beautiful, beautiful. Similar though with microaggressions, although completely different. When it comes to mental health, you know, if one of our colleagues is struggling with cancer, everybody's like, we're here for you, we got your back, get your treatments, you know, check in with us. When someone's away on a depression leave, oftentimes the talk around the water cooler is, really, how long, when will they, like, you know the talk that you hear. Do any of you have guidance for us, individual contributors, managers, or senior leaders? How do we address that mindset that's still there, that stigma that is still there from mental health? Any comments or thoughts about that aside from the question? Naomi, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was thinking about that and thinking also about what Val was saying about having, I appreciate the fact that you have a mandatory mental health education program, because you know, you never want to feel like you're forcing somebody into these conversations or wanting to learn about it, but at the same time, it really level sets. And we do something similar at Enbridge. I don't think it's necessarily mandatory, but I'm going to take that idea back. But it's called The Working Mind, and it really gives a common language around how to speak about these things, about mental health, at work with your colleagues. And you know, there's this, and we've used it in our team, where we kind of identify with how we're feeling that day, whether it's red, in the red zone, in the orange, yellow, green, and we talk about it, and we just kind of put it out on the table. And so I think having that common language is a great starting point to be able to talk more openly about that.
Beautiful, thanks. Valerie, anything else to add on that?
Great.
Okay, good stuff, good stuff. I am going to learn my lesson and make sure I come down into the audience to ask some questions. But before I go there, and this one's to all of you, what advice would you give young women who are starting off their careers? What would you say to your younger self? Who wants to start that one?
The perm was not a good idea.
I so feel you. I thought the same thing. My perm did not work for me either.
Putting that out there. Yeah, so risk and courage in the earlier part of my career. Like, I even think back now, so my niece and my daughters are 15 and 16 and starting to get their first jobs, and I'm like, I had my first gig at 13, right? And I'm a bit braggy about it, but I think you have to get confidence and some risk and go out there to ask for some work, and work begets work, right? So I see a lot of, my teenagers, friends and whatever coming in, they're like 18 and they're graduating and they have nothing that they've cut their teeth on. So I would say start early. And set up this expectation of every role's a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. So that would be one. Two is kind of figure out what you like to do. Because there's nothing worse than, clocking 40 hours for the world's most boring job. So go in and find something, even if it's not the highest paying job, but if it's something that gives you energy, something will become of it. So if you see yourself in that job, or even volunteering to get you into the space, I think just find where your energies are and your passions are, and your career unfolds a little bit in the way it was meant to. And then lastly, I would say whatever job you have, kick it. Right? So for me, a lot of my career has been a tap on the shoulder. Hey, Tara, you've really shown up in that role. I'd like to take you over here to do something you've never done. So you start to get sponsors and champions just by being good in the role that you're in. But I would say take risk, know yourself and what's going to make you happy, know what you can't live without and what you can live with, and don't be afraid to try something new.
Thank you. Valerie, you want to?
Yeah, really good advice, Tara. And I would add that it's not linear in terms of progression in a career. I always think of it as a lattice. Don't be afraid to take positions that might be a lateral, because you're going to gain some new experience, and then you might jump up, and then you're going to do a lateral again. And you just never know what may come of it. So always be open to new experiences and opportunities. And if I was to speak to my younger self, I would say, have more confidence in yourself. Just don't be afraid. And you know more than you think you know, because often I would find that I stayed quiet, I was afraid to speak up, and then sure enough, it's like, I had that idea. I would have just spoken out, so have more confidence.
Well done. Well said. Naomi, what about your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm going to come back to my theme of being brave. I was that kid that was quiet. In fact, I reflect often on a comment that was made to me. It was a university drama class, and we were in drama. So yeah, it wasn't like we were just sitting in a lecture. And the instructor said to me, after I did it was an exam of some sort, she looked at me and she's like, Naomi, nobody needs another cute little wallflower. And that was like a wake-up call for me. Just that somebody who I admired a lot looked at me and thought of a wallflower. And it was just kind of a moment for me that I will always remember. And I thought to myself, what am I doing to kind of create that image, that vision? And it was really because I wasn't using my authentic voice. And I find that we try to mold ourselves for these institutions and organizations that we perhaps work for or within, for our family expectations, for all these things. But really, when it comes down to it, it's really finding your voice. I know that's been utilized a lot, but really doing some reflection, finding that voice, finding what drives you, and just going for it. Life's too short. Life is too short to not go for it. Put up your hand, do the hard things. We can all do hard things. We do get really, I think, I got caught up in that thought that if I sat down, did really good work in my office, people would notice. And that's not necessarily true. You got to be loud. You got to use your voice. And it took me a long time to learn that. And I wish all of you a journey of finding your voice if you have not yet found it.
Beautiful. Yes, recognition. So are there questions in the audience? Raise your hand before I come running on down there now again, because I'm getting my workout, and here we go. Wow, I see a little bit of courage or maybe a lot of vulnerability. Women, we are about to get a question from a man. Are you ready for this? There you go.
So this question is for the whole panel, but I think I'll say that I'm speaking for myself, but also hopefully for some of the members of my team. When you get into those places, when you take the courage, we talked a lot about courage, we talked a lot about taking that step. Okay, now you're standing in the room, and when the imposter syndrome shows up, what are a few tools that you can share with the group to help battle through those moments, to help you take the step that comes after that one?
Oh, I think Robin had a good line this morning, blow those birthday candles. Yeah, and you're there for a reason. You deserve to be there. And nobody knows what you're going to say. Just like up here, we could have had something else planned. So just believe in yourself. You're there for a reason. And even if you do make a mistake, that's okay. What's the worst that's going to happen? Like you put yourself out there, and you're only going to be better for it. But I hear you. I know. I actually just learned that term, the imposter syndrome. I didn't even know it was a thing, but that's what I was feeling. So sometimes it's good to be able to put a name to it, but it does exist. And sometimes it helps validate what you feel at the time, but know that you can move beyond that.
One of my husband's bosses had a great, my husband's like very high strung. And he was always like, oh, I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I did that. And his boss said, look, dude, go to bed tonight. Wake up 24 hours from now. Do you think anybody in that room cares what you said or even remembers? It's only you. Now, if you wake up the next day, a month from now, and you think they still care and remember, you might have to do some stakeholder management. But at the end of the day, the talk in your head is so much louder than the talk in other people's heads about you. What would be worse is to not have a voice for them to hear it all.
We have more audience questions. Where are they? Raise your hand, stand up for me. Looking. Okay, I'm learning, right? I mean, I don't need self-recognition, but at the same point, I didn't want to make that same mistake of not getting those questions out. Oh, was there another one? I heard a voice. Oh, thank you, waving at me. Hello. You're welcome.
Hi, ladies. You talked about finding your voice and standing out from the crowd. How would you recommend somebody doing that, standing out from a crowd from a bunch of individuals that either look like you or don't look like you?
Yeah, great question. I think standing out can be scary. So again, it comes back to some bravery. But when I reflect on the times where I feel like I was taking a leap, it was putting up my hand and saying, that thing over there, I think I could do that. And again, it's very much a lattice as well. Some stretch project that you think you could do, or maybe you don't think you can do, but you take that leap of faith that you'll get there and you'll be able to work through it. And when I think about standing out, now when I'm at this point in my career, I think about it as not necessarily standing out, but how can I help others? And I think everybody in this room can think about it in that way, because when you are supporting others, helping to solve a problem, whatever that problem is, really kind of collectively coming together to create a better future within your organization, outside of your organization, it really, you will be noticed for that, I think. Because that is really, in my mind, again, another key quality about leadership. It's an act of service, and it's really being able to bring people together. And so if you can do that, I think you'll have a great start.
I'm not sure I fully get the question, because you can have good intentions and bad intentions of standing out. But if the intention is to get noticed and people can see what you're aware of and can do for the organization or the community in which you're contributing to, I would just say get really self-aware of what your strengths are and find opportunities to monopolize those strengths. So if you're a great public speaker, hey, it's a great way to stand out and maybe host a session like this. Or if you're much more reflective and analytical, what project might you glom onto that can really showcase your skills? So find your secret weapon, and then find something that aligns well to your secret weapon, and use your mentor or your champion to find the venue for that.
And if I may share, one of the processes that I have always been in female-dominated industries, whether it was retail banking, travel and tourism, talent development, training and development, always been in female-dominated industries. And as a senior leader, I had my direct reports, and my favorite was my Monday morning meetings. And each Monday I would ask my direct reports this question. And the first time I asked it, they were like, "Bill, you ask a lot of really weird questions. That's one of the weirdest ones you've ever asked." And the question was, in the last week, what accomplishment are you most proud of? And they had no answer. And so the next Monday morning meeting, I asked the same question again. In the last week, what accomplishment are you most proud of? And they're like, "That question again?" And I said, "Yeah. And let me be abundantly clear with you. I'm going to ask that question again next week. I expect you to have an answer." The next week I asked the question again, and they told me. And I said, "Wow, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. You know, it's my expectation in talent development that you not stay with me forever, that you develop, you grow, and you move on. So I'm going to ask you right now to write your resume and put it on the desktop of your computer at work." And they're like, "Whoa, that's weird." One person came to me, "Are you want me to leave?" I'm like, "No, don't leave. Please don't leave. I want you to stay, but I want you to be ready to go." The next week, I asked the same question again, and they had an answer. And I said, "That's cool. You should put that on your resume." And they said, "Okay." And the next week, I asked the question again. And again, they could tell me the accomplishment they were proud of. They had begun to learn how to do it on their own. And I said, that's incredible. You should put that on your resume." And guess what I heard back? "I already did." Yeah. How many times have a job posting gone up? And whether you think you're qualified for it or not, what do you say to yourself that night when you're driving home? "Tonight, I'm going to update my resume." And the next night, and the next night. And 10 days later, it's too late. So I'm excited for all of you to have your resumes ready. But my final question to each of you, in a word or two, what are you excited about in the future? Looking out at this audience, what are you excited about? Naomi, do you want to start with that?
Sure. So I live in the world of, I know this will be short, in the world of privacy. Privacy is the future, people. I'm just giving a plug. But privacy means that I spend a lot of time thinking about technology and the evolution of technology and technology's effects on society and humans. What I'm excited about when I look into this room is the sheer amount of human potential that we will need to solve a lot of challenges and problems in the world, and I just see so much great human potential. And if we can harness it and share it and amplify it, that would be amazing.
There's two really cool things that I'm seeing coming out of the pandemic. One of the flattening of organizations and cities and towns and globes, where it used to be the most junior team member couldn't talk to the CEO. Well, the pandemic blew that out of the water. And I'm not sure if it's people felt the safety in their homes or they were invited into virtual environments they might not either have been invited into. But to me, there was just this unwritten rules of everybody has a voice now coming out of the pandemic, and I hope we learn not to lose it, because I've heard so many wonderful breakthrough moments of some of our junior talent just ignore all the social norms that existed that was before. The second one is this strong social purpose feel that's coming out of the pandemic, and how can we connect that to what our organizations are trying to do, and how can we connect that to what we want to do as people to add value to our lives. And so how can we start to see that sort of purpose-driven mindfulness work happening, and Canada's the place to do it, so I'd like to be the epicenter of it, but just, yeah, aligning purpose to self and company, and just delayering and democratizing. Just go to the brilliant people and learn how to take advantage.
And I'll just say I'm really excited about the connections that are happening again. So great to be here with so many of you. And that's something that I think we all learn to appreciate all that much more.
Fantastic, and that's our time with the executives here on the executive panel. Naomi, Tara, Valerie, thank you so much. Cheers.